Yo, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Good to see you again. Hope you're doing well today. I just got back from the national championship that was just hosted here in North America in Dallas, Texas. And let me tell you, it was such a fun trip. Like, I did not do well at all, but I had such a fun trip. I decided to bring Black Luffy with me just on a whim, because Gecko was kind of like being faded out with a lot of the changes that Black Yellow Luffy and Lucci and a couple other decks were making. So Gecko didn't feel as good as I wanted it to be with my previous list. I would have had to change it up quite a bit, and I just didn't really feel like doing that. So I brought Black Luffy. I had a good time. I got inspiration from my Italian brothers overseas. It was a lot of fun. But I definitely drew dead in some matches, and in others I did okay. But I think that the deck just needs Jack, and now that it's OP08 time, it's super solid. But even though I did X3 and drop, I was fine with it. I was like, I got 3 wins, 3 losses. I'm okay with this. I'm fine. I just wanted to eat, so I left and ate some food. But the biggest thing that I took away from the trip was I sometimes like take content creation for, I wouldn't say for granted, but like just as like something that I use as an outlet to have fun and to entertain myself, and really just to see if anybody else enjoys it. But I had so many people come up to me and tell me that they appreciate the content, that they love the streams, or that they love the videos, that they love the podcast. And I kid you not, it was so amazing to hear that, even though I haven't been as active as I have been in the past. And that just it filled me with like a lot of appreciation, and I can't say thank you enough. So if you are one of those individuals that came up, said hello, just know you made my day. Like, legitimately, y'all made my day. It was fantastic. And just big shout out to the guys in the Dad Discord as well. You know who you are. My Airbnb crew was phenomenal. We had a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. I could not thank those guys enough for such a fun trip. And congrats to Jackson. Jackson is a monster. This dude, 2nd place last year. Well, I shouldn't even say last year. It was this past January. And then 1st place this Nationals. Like, you're obviously insane at the game. That is so sick, dude. I'm so happy for him. And I really hope to do better in the upcoming events. But at the end of the day, I always want to prioritize having a good time first. So I want to have fun, and that's really my main objective. So I know that this has been a bit of a rant, but I did want to talk about some of my experience at Nationals. I'm going to roll a couple clips and maybe a couple photos that I took while I was there, just to showcase, like, it was really fun. There was a lot of cool stuff, and it was really neat. But afterwards, the second half of this video, I kind of want to go over something that I don't usually do. But this is my predictions for the OP08 meta, and how I think maybe some decks are going to pan out in the meta. So without further ado, I'll let some of these clips roll. All right, so after the Nationals experience, I was starting to think, whether it was on the airplane or while I was just sitting there watching some side events or hanging out with some friends, what is the OP08 meta going to look like? Now, I do want to preface this. This is going to be specifically before 8.5. So when the starter decks come out in October, this list right here is before then. I don't even want to think about that because I think it's going to completely shift a lot of this, and there's a very obvious best deck in the format once that happens. But until then, I kind of like went through, I would say, some of the more used or maybe more popular leaders. There's obviously not going to be some on here, so if you do think there are some missing, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm not trying to make this objective. This is just an opinion. I just think I went over some of these and where I think they might fall, and it's pretty interesting. So as far as top decks, just hitting Black, Yellow, Luffy, and Lucci and getting them out of the way. Black, Yellow, Luffy is not really going to go anywhere until Dofi becomes an absolute menace. So I think that Black, Yellow, Luffy is going to be pretty dang solid to start off the OP08 meta. I don't think the deck is going to change very much. There might be a little bit of changes, but all in all, I think they'll be pretty small. Lucci obviously has quite a few big changes, adding Jack and cutting a couple of cards and adding like Who's Who, maybe changing out some 2Ks. It does become a little bit different of a deck, which also makes me feel slightly more comfortable that Gecko could play not great into Lucci. I think Lucci will still be the better deck, but it would have a slightly better matchup than at the very end of the OP07 matchup, or OP07 meta, excuse me. But I still do think that Gecko gets pretty outshined. So for any of my homies that love Gecko just like I do, I know I've been answering a lot of you guys. I haven't done a lot of OP08 testing, but I will tell you this. Just from testing a little bit towards the beginning of Nationals and the end, with some friends, Gecko is not looking to be in a great spot. But the future of that deck is super bright because I think that any Thriller Bark package additions does make that deck have some really, really powerful plays. I think that Gecko is going to be very much so like Blue Doflamingo, where in OP01, this is funny, there's a clip somewhere out there if someone could find it, but there should be multiple actually, of me saying that I believe back in, I think it was like OP04, I was like, I believe that Blue Doflamingo is going to be one of the best decks in the game eventually. I was like, because the leader ability is insane, and Gecko Moria is more or less like black Blue Doflamingo. It's essentially like a different way of playing Doflamingo, but in a black deck. So very interesting there. But I have those two as the top decks. I think that a lot of these in competitive could get close enough to where they could potentially compete with the top decks, but there are a few that are kind of sprinkled in here as a little bit of copium almost, and also a few other reasons. I think that Nami just isn't going to be bad. I think Nami's great. It's a bit of a high roll deck at the end of the day though, and a lot of people are teching around to play around it. But I do believe that Nami was, I wouldn't say struggle into Lucci, but Lucci matchup was a little bit harder because they were running 6-cost Brooks. They're no longer doing that. So with Lucci being probably one of the most popular, if not the most popular decks ran, I think that's solid. Also, Black Yellow Luffy isn't bad by any means into Nami, but you have to draw fairly well, which can be difficult. You can't just draw perfect every game. So I think that Nami actually has a fairly decent matchup into those top decks, which arguably could put Nami into that top deck range. And Bonnie, I think Bonnie's just the best green deck. It's incredible. It obviously has a bit of struggles into Lucci, and I think it's probably going to get worse now that Jack is in the mix, but who knows? I think it's still kind of up in the air. I like Bonnie's chances of being a very competitive deck and still finding its place in this meta. So I think Bonnie's going to be really solid. Black Luffy is actually a really interesting deck. After testing it, I found that, with Jack, that deck is wildly good. I still believe that Lucci has just a higher ceiling and higher capabilities than Luffy does, but I think Luffy really capitalizes off of its leader effect and makes a lot of matchups a little more awkward and a little more difficult with everything being a +1. And OP08 really just kind of rounds out the deck really well. and it helps get rid of those bricks, which I found to be a huge problem in a lot of the games that I played with the OP07 list, you know, from the Italian players. It really helps out a lot, and putting cards into trash for your Moria plays. So super solid. I think in OP08, Black Luffy definitely has a really strong play. Purple Luffy, I don't think Purple Luffy is kind of like Bonnie in my opinion. I just don't think Purple Luffy will ever be bad. It might not be best deck in format, but I don't think it'll ever be bad. It's a super solid deck. I don't think it really gets any massive upgrades from OP08. I'm not sure if anybody would run Lin Lin in Luffy, but there might be a card that I'm missing or not thinking of. I guess maybe 3-cost Pudding? No, that doesn't seem right. But yeah, I like Luffy. I like its chances of still being great. I actually lost my round 1 in the national event to a purple Luffy player. He saw a pretty insane god curve, but it was still like relatively close. He definitely just had me. 2 uses Captain Kid blockers, 2 9-cost Kaidos. I was like, oh dear, I'm dead. So it was pretty rough, but it was still fun nonetheless. And then Zoro actually has a really interesting couple of additions that happen in OP08, which I think makes the deck very aggressive, very fun. It's a do or die kind of deck, which I like. So to see that kind of aggression coming back is awesome. I think Zoro's definitely going to find a spot. I do think that in my opinion, it's still not going to be the best. I think that decks like Zoro were really, you know, they shined a lot more when there was like less card pool, and, you know, colors didn't really have the right answers to certain things, or, you know, the proper ways to be able to defend themselves later in the game. So I believe that, you know, Zoro is definitely going to be competitive, but at the same time, I think almost every deck will have some form of play around the deck as a whole. Maybe except for Purple Luffy. They might be down bad. We also have Blue Doflamingo. This one's obviously still great, but it's going to be insane when the starter decks come out. So I think that Doflamingo is really pretty solid right now, but it just doesn't find itself near the top end of the decks. It's more of kind of like a middle ground in competitive. I like it, but once it hits that starter deck is where it really starts to pop off and go crazy. Yeah, I mean, you can't really go wrong. I think the leader ability is amazing. Being able to be aggressive whilst also developing board is insane. Hence why I always loved Gecko Moria. I could be aggressive to life or to board and develop as well, which I think is just unbelievably good. So Doflamingo's probably still going to be solid, but I think that it just needs that little extra. Well, it's not even a little extra. It's getting quite a few that really changes the landscape of that deck as a whole. I also put RP Luffy in here. I think RP Luffy is just one of those decks, in my opinion, that if you hit the God curve, it's kind of hard to lose. Like, if you hit this, I'm trying to think of the name of it. I think it's like Jean Bart, or you don't even need that anymore. You could use the Mr. 2 Bonclay. But like Jean Bart, Mr. 2, ramp into like 7-cost, into 9-cost Newgate, into, you know, more 9-cost Newgates or Shanks or Dragon, or just like 10-cost Gear 5 Luffy. Like, and then you just get like one Radical Beam in your hand, and it's insane. The deck is insane. Like that curve is so hard to beat no matter what. Like you feel like you're going to be at 1 life by turn 4 against that deck. So it's really, really tough. But if they don't see it, the deck's kind of mid. So that's why I put that deck as competitive. But as a whole, I think it's got some chances. I really do believe though that in OP09 and further that deck is probably going to be one of the best in the format. So be on the watch out for Red Purple Luffy. We also have Reiju. Reiju is one of the decks that I personally love. Reiju's leader ability, but I hate the stage. I think the stage is like, I don't know. There should be stage removal in this game because that stage is so free and it's broken for it's crazy like how good that is. But without stage removal, I mean, I don't think anyone is going to run anything other than the Germa 6/6 package. But there is such a cool world where purple, blue Reiju can be built in so many different ways because the leader effect is so generic. It's just whenever you minus a Dawn, draw a card. So, you know, I love the idea of like Animal Kingdom Pirates Reiju or, you know, other archetypes being used in this deck. And with the Dawn minus effect, being able to draw an extra one every single time is just like absolutely insane. So whenever you play a card and it does a Dawn minus, you're replacing it immediately in hand. I love Reiju. I'm super excited for the future of that deck as well. But I think it's still going to be competitive. You know, it's obviously got its bad matchups, but it's still pretty solid. Now I put purple yellow pudding up here. I won't lie to you guys. I don't actually know anything about purple yellow pudding. The only reason I put it up here is because I have been hearing some buzz about it and that it did well in the early stages of OP08 in the West. Or maybe it didn't do that well, but it did, like, it won a couple flagship events or something like that. But I don't know a lot about pudding, so I'm not going to really talk too much about it. But the next we have is Kalgara. I have this as competitive, but it realistically should be under playable or like fun at locals. I don't believe that the deck is that great. I think that it's just like a Nell, where until people learn how to play against it, it's going to be one of those decks that will, at the very beginning of OP08, absolutely crush and demolish people's spirits, and they will be super upset and sad about it. So I think that Kalgara, realistically, it's not bad by any means, but I don't think it's nearly as good as it was maybe success-wise over in the East. So Kalgara's probably going to catch people off guard at the very beginning, but then I think once people figure out how to play against it, it's going to fade out. It's just going to fizzle. So Boa is such a sick deck. I think that Boa and Dofi were kind of hand in hand for a little bit, but then Dofi started to take a little bit of an edge just because Boa just isn't as good. It's not as aggressive, being able to flood the board as much, maintaining hand size and all of that. Yeah, I think Boa's gonna be better as the game progresses because it's a super solid leader effect, and it's a 5-life leader, which is, you know, just great. And yeah, I like it a lot. I think that it can be competitive. We'll see if it's going to be the top of the competitive sphere or not. I put it at the bottom because I don't particularly play Boa as much, and I don't know if it got the best of additions in OP08, but I like the deck. I think that it's never going to be that bad, so I kind of like put it as a middle ground. Now, playable decks, I put Enel and Katakuri I kind of put together. Enel and Katakuri are great, but I think that Enel, again, it's just kind of fizzling out. I hate the leader effect, but I can't really complain when it's kind of getting fizzled out by other decks that are just doing well and performing well in the meta. And Katakuri, I actually think will be higher once the starter decks come out because it has some insane additions that come to it. And that is like, I hate Katakuri gaming. I'm not a Katakuri fan. So I don't want to see, you know, us go back to a meta that's reliant on triggers and just get luck sacking. It's so annoying. But it is what it is. I think it is playable. You know, can Katakuri, you know, win some tournaments and events? Potentially. As far as like a 9-round event, absolutely not. Not even close. Deck is cooked. But like, you know, maybe like I could see it winning like a 32-man store regional. I could. You know, if it's low enough games to where you just get lucky for 4 games, 5 games, yeah, you're good. That deck could probably win. Gecko, I talked about earlier. Unfortunately, I don't think it's bad. I think you could still play it. I just don't. It's not going to be the top of the top. Which makes me so sad. It really does. I love Gecko Moria. That is my baby. That's my deck. And it's unfortunately taken a backseat. It's going to take a bit of an L. Yeah, it's just not got... It doesn't get any great additions in OP08. I've tried a little bit of it with Jack. It doesn't feel right, but I also maybe just haven't built it correctly. It just doesn't feel right. You have to change the deck completely, which in turn kind of makes all of your plays much worse, so it doesn't really have a lot of the consistency that you're looking for. Yeah, and I'm not a huge fan of that. I play Gecko because I love the consistency of it. And Perona I have right afterwards. Yet again, I believe that Perona is one of those leaders that the leader effect is too good to not be a playable deck. The leader effect is phenomenal. It's also got options. It has multiple ways to build and develop this. I think the Perona will actually be very solid in OP09, but in OP08, I don't foresee it going crazy, but it could. It could surprise all of us. I like Perona a lot, though. That leader effect and color combination, phenomenal. So I'm very interested to see what people cook up or do with that deck, because I could be very wrong and it could be very competitive, or it could be absolutely hot garbage. So who knows? And then I put Newgate and Yamato down there as well. Two very playable aggro decks. I don't think Newgate will ever be bad. I'm sorry. It's just, there's a few of these decks that just, I feel like they will always find themselves at some place of like tier 1.5, 2, or like 2.5. You know what I mean? And that's what I'm considering playable as like tier 2, right? Whereas competitive is like 1.5 and top decks being tier 1, like the best of the best. And yeah, Newgate for me personally is just, it's a solid deck that performs well into many matchups. It also loses into quite a few as well, but just a good all-around deck, honestly. Can't really go wrong. And then Yamato is one of those leaders that it's I kind of call it like a troll leader, because like you could be aggressive as heck with this deck and just win based off of your opponent bricking. Like straight up, you just win off of your opponent not drawing anything. I have quite literally seen turn 3 Yamato getting somebody to 0 life, and then the following turn just playing Hody Jones, like swinging 5 and then playing Hody Jones and attaching 2 Dawn to Hody and swinging 10, and they win. And I'm like, what? You just won in 4 turns, and it was like they had like 11, 12 cards in hand and couldn't get out of a 10k. So sometimes like you just brick and that deck just wins. It's crazy. And I've had it happen to me, and it's the most miserable loss ever. But moving on to the final like little pieces, I personally put some decks here that I thought would be fun at locals. Do I think that they maybe have a place? Potentially, but I have reasonings as to why I don't think they will be the best of the best or very competitive. So Carrot, I think, is a very interesting green deck, but I also just don't think it's not Bonnie. Like Bonnie's ability is so good. It's so good. How that leader effect like coincides with the rest of like how your deck plays as well is like absurd. So personally, I'd be taking Bonnie over Carrot, but Carrot has some really interesting cards. One of which I actually think we were talking about this at Nationals. Actually, my green screen will probably eat this thing up, won't it? Yeah, more or less. But Pedro is, I think this is one of the sickest green cards that got printed. For a 4/5 blocker, on KO, choose one, rest one of your opponent's Dawn cards, or KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 6 or less. That is pretty good. Your opponent has to play very proactive around this, and this card is just very reactive to how they are playing, and I like this. I think it's kind of just underrated. I don't think I hear many people talking about Pedro, but yeah, I see a world where this card is going to be pretty insane. Yeah, so I like that for the Minx tribe and just kind of having that. Kaido, Purple Kaido. This is one that I have now at Fun at Locals because I don't know exactly how I feel about where it will fall. Because I could see Purple Kaido actually being a monster. Purple Kaido, like, there's many ways you can build it, but there's so many good purple editions. So many in OP08. Like, it's just awesome. For Kaido specifically, for like an Animal Kingdom leader and like a searcher, it is all you can eat buffet for additions to this deck. And especially having the 1-cost searcher, that it's an event that searches Big Mom and Animal Kingdom pirates, allows you to build your deck with, you know, a lot of very, very useful like top end Big Mom Pirates cards, as well as, you know, Animal Kingdom. And so I just love the idea of Kaido. I could see that deck absolutely crushing, but we'll see. I don't know how it would play into, you know, certain matchups, but I like it. 5-life leader and the effect of being able to KO a life is super crucial. Can help out in a lot of weird matchups. I also have King on here. I think King is, I hate to say it, like, I'm going to be cooking up a couple of King lists. I don't think King's going to be that great, unfortunately. Yeah, I hate to say it. I just don't think King's going to be that great. But it looks like it's a super fun deck. I've played it a couple of times. There's also like a ton of ways you can build it. So I always love when there's decks that don't just have like one solved list, you know? There's like multiple ways you can try and build this deck, which I think is very fun. So personally, I'm going to be trying out King. I don't think it's going to be that great, but I'm just super happy I pulled the leader because I've always wanted purple black to be a thing, and I'm ready for it. Yeah. We also have Marco, blue red, which Marco is another one that I think when it first got announced, I was like, oh my god, that's the new Sakazuki. Marco's going to be crazy. And then I started playing the deck and I was like, it's okay. It's okay. I think you can have a lot of fun with the deck. Blue red is actually a really interesting color combination. I always thought that anybody that played Vivi, I think you can understand, that deck was really fun. Like, there was so many like weird things that you could do with a lot of the top end cards and just like your 4 or 5 costs. So I think that Marco could be really cool. I don't think it's going to be very good, but that's why I'm all about, like, these are fun decks. These are the decks I want to try. Like, I want to play at locals, have a good time. The rest is like, yeah, if I'm going to a competition, like, I'm really trying to win, I'm probably going to be bringing those. But Vegapunk, I think Vegapunk's another one that's like, it's just a fun deck, but it's super troll because, like, it actually has some matchups that are disgusting. Like, it can't lose. Like, it legitimately just can't lose, which is wild. And then there's others that it's like, you can't win. You have no shot whatsoever of winning that game, or any game for that matter. But I think Vegapunk's also really cool, and I think that might be a fun deck to bring to locals and try out. But yet again, this is all my opinion. I could be totally wrong. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. You know, whether you agree or disagree. I don't want anybody to get angry and be like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you did that." And I'm like, dude, these are just preemptive thoughts about how I think OP08 will shake up. If it changes and it ends up being different, I probably won't be surprised. I'm gonna be honest with you. These are just predictions. But decks that I'm very excited for and trying and testing out are gonna be Purple Kaido, Purple Black King. I want to do a little bit of RP Luffy. I want to do some black starter deck 14 Luffy, and I think I might do some Doflamingo as well, but I think I'm actually more just interested in Doflamingo once the starter decks come out, because I think that's when the deck kind of gets crazy. But yeah, those are some of the decks I'm excited for, and I'm definitely going to be trying out. But I'll be bringing a few to locals, so I'd love to hear what you guys think, like whether you guys would like to see certain lists. Yeah, I'm going to try and be a lot better about that, because this past set, I pretty much just did Gecko Moria. I know some people love that, but I know others were kind of like, all right, dude, can we see something else? So I'm going to try and do the most. I, yet again, just want to reiterate how thankful I am that you guys have been so amazing with the kind words and everything about the content. And, it really like this past national experience really invigorated, you know, like I know that I'm pretty busy with a lot of stuff going on in my life, but I really want to try and buckle down and get back to doing at least one every other day, like a video every other day. Because I used to upload daily, but, you know, a lot of stuff going on in life and trying to pay off debts and, you know, paying for the wedding and everything, it can be stressful. So I appreciate you guys as always. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.